As Ellie said earlier, we'd like you to pop in the comment box, the chat box where you're joining us from tonight. It's always really good to hear where you are and where you're joining us from. And please use the Q&A for your specific questions, which we might miss if you just put in the chat. We will be having time for questions, 10 or 15 minutes at the end of Mark's talk for specific questions. We'll try and get round to everybody's to answer them. I'm sure you've got lots of frog and amphibian questions. I know I've got a few. So we're really lucky, as I said, to have our colleague, Dr. Mark Champion, to talk all things amphibian with us tonight. He's a specialist in wetland restoration. And I think you've worked in this field for a while. Well, I shouldn't say worked in the field. I should say worked in the wetland, shouldn't I? For a while, haven't you, Mark? And you're working in Wigan for the Wildlife Trust at the moment. Okay, so I'd like to pass you over to Ellie. I think you've got a question to ask everybody first.
Yes, really quick frog-related question, which you should see on your screens now. So let us know, have you ever found frog spawn in a pond? Have you ever found frog spawn in a pond? So I'll give you a little bit of time just to let us know.
Yeah, it might be recently, might be years ago. You'll probably remember, I'd have thought. I certainly remember finding some.
Yeah, I definitely do. I definitely do. Great. So I'll give you a few more seconds just to vote if you want to. Great. And I will leave it there. So 92% of you have found frog spawn in a pond, which is lovely to hear. That's great. It is so exciting when you do. 5% of you have never found frog spawn in a pond, and 3% of you can't remember, which is fair enough. Might have been a while ago. The reason we ask is because in a recent piece of research by the Wildlife Trusts, we found that only 50% of children had ever found frog spawn in a pond, which I think is heartbreaking, because yeah, so much of my childhood was underpinned on frog spawn. I think a lot of people's was. And so now, here to talk to us about frogs and frog spawn and various other things, we'll hand over to Mark Champion, and I will share the presentation now. And I'll just give you control, Mark. There you go.
Right. I'm disappearing you, sorry, just there we go. Right. So if it gets a bit quieter or anything, Ellie, just write a chat to say become louder or something. So I've got no way of monitoring it, obviously, here. Right. So, hello everyone. So today we're going to look at frogs and ponds and how we can all work to benefit frogs and amphibians in our landscape, and our gardens, because our gardens are really important for frogs with small ponds and so on, and these are really important as part of that wider landscape. So your garden, be it in the city, in a terraced house, or in a larger garden, you can actually work to help conserve frogs. So it's a species that's actually in decline for various reasons that everybody who's listening to this talk, or virtually everybody who's listening to this talk, can help us conserve. So there we go. How do I change the there, that's it, I've remembered. Right, so these are the British amphibians. So in the top corner there, we have a great crested newt female. No, we haven't. We've got a common newt female, then a great crested newt male, then a palmate newt with its little palmy feet. So there we go, that's really nice. And you can see they've also got this little needle thin tip to the tail. So they're the 3 newts that we have that are native, and they've found in quite a wide range of ponds, including gardens. And here in Wigan, common newt is quite common in many of the garden ponds. I regularly get calls about people who have lifted up some rubble in their garden and found hibernating common newts in the garden. So it's really quite important for them. Then we have a common toad down here, which again you find in the garden. They're slightly more terrestrial than the other amphibians, and you find them on the strawberry patch in your garden, or quite often eating worms and so on in the flower bed. So you see quite a number of toads over a year in gardens potentially. One of the rarer ones is a natterjack toad, and in our area you find this natterjack toad at the coast at Formby and along that Sefton coast in the dune slacks, which are the pools between the dunes where it breeds. And
hi, Mark.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Somebody's put in the chat that the sound keeps going. So I don't know if you've got any way of getting closer to your microphone or.
Right, I can. Yep.
Yeah. Thank you.
Is that? Let me know. I've made adjustments. Hopefully.
Thank you.
This is the natterjack toad. Right, I've got various people, various things. This is the natterjack toad, and it's found at Formby and on the Sefton coast, where it lives in the dune slacks. The dune slacks are the pools where it's wet between the dunes. Now, one of the troubles is that it's found at night when it makes a loud sort of singing, croaking noise. It's very famous, and the rangers and so on do walks in ideal years to show people the frogs at night. Otherwise, you do see the toad tadpoles. Then one that people won't recognise so often, and wasn't recognised as being native until about 5-10 years ago, is the pool frog. Now, this is only found in areas on the Brecks of East Anglia, but again, it makes a really loud froggy zipping noise, sort of burpy noise. It blows up great big cheek pouches and really sort of warbles. It's the classic sort of sound of frogs that you get in the frog chorus and so on. And then our native common frog up here. So there we are. That's all of the British native amphibians. They're the ones that you're likely to see. There are occasionally people have released tree frog and things. They're not native and they don't last very long in the wild. So that's our native amphibians. So being amphibians, they all lay their eggs in the water. So you have the mating male and the female frog, the males being the smaller, females being larger, and they lay their eggs, and the eggs are laid on just the little black parts with slime around them. The slime actually captures the water to make the classic toad, the frog and toad spawn. So the actual jelly absorbs water from the pond, and that's why you can get so many eggs from a female, because they're not all made like that. And if you find on the pavement occasionally where a frog has been killed or has been eaten by a crow or a fox, you will find what they call moon jelly, which is these sort of strange, mysterious patches of like white jelly that you find in fields and on pavements. And that's because the eggs haven't been fertilized, and so you just get the big sort of jelly absorbing the spring humidity and making the jelly. Then obviously after time, the eggs develop as embryos and they make the little tiny tadpole, and the little tiny tadpole eats the yolk up, which you can see underneath here. It's a dark color in these young frogs, and they eat up the yolk, and then they go off swimming. And to begin with, they're vegetarian and they do eat algae and other small plants. And gradually, though, they move to a more carnivorous diet as they get older. So here they go. So you can see it swimming around with the external gills, similar to a fish, capturing the oxygen from out of the water. And then gradually, as the legs start to develop, they become more and more dependent on gulping oxygen from the surface and absorbing it through the skin of their bodies. So there they are, sort of all getting older and older, the legs developing, the tail gradually getting shorter, until as a little froglet, they leave the water. And if you see the little froglets leaving the water in May and June, you will see they've still got the little tiny bit of a tail left. And then they hop off and start to eat a terrestrial diet of little invertebrates and things like springtails and little tiny gnats and the like, until they can eat a larger diet, including sort of larger worms and things, and get fatter and fatter. And then after about 3-4 years, they can start the cycle again. So that's what our frogs are doing. It's also pretty similar for all of the other amphibians as well. So they all go really through this stage, and that's why ponds are so very important for our amphibians and frogs. So there we are. You can see the frog spawn there, and you can see there's a little tadpole starting to form. There's the eggs. So they are temperature dependent. The warmer it is, the faster the eggs develop. So it's that's why some springs that they hardly see the frog spawn for any length of time, and then the frogs, all the tadpoles sit on the eggs mass, and they gradually eat up the egg mass. That's one of their first dietary bits, because this is quite high protein jelly. So there's loads of food within the egg mass. So that's the first bit, and then of course you've got the frogs. And when the frogs are breeding, a female will often attract quite a lot of males, all of which will fertilize her eggs. So that's why you see these big knots of frogs and toads in ponds. So you can see down there they're busy with all the eggs being fertilized. There's a few eggs there that have avoided the fertilization, which are left white, but most of them will develop nicely and form the tadpoles. So what can you do to help us conserve frogs in our area? Well, obviously, one of the nice things you can do is build a pond. And who doesn't like to sit beside a pond? Here's a little plastic duck. So you sit beside a pond. It's good for your mental health and relaxing, and you know, drink a gin and tonic beside a pond is a nice thing. So this one's a nicely made pond with nice rocks around the edge, and there's plenty of places for the birds to get in and drink, and the frogs and the toads to be able to get in and out, and then there's some hiding crevices so that they can escape the predators, because quite a lot of birds will eat them, and even blackbirds will eat the small young tadpoles and things. So they need plenty of opportunities to be able to escape, and a good range of plants, because a healthy pond, which is what frogs and toads and amphibians need, has got all these lovely tall plants. Whee, I was going around in circles. It's quite amazing. Big tall plants. They're good for oxygen. They're good for the dragonflies and the butterflies to use. So you're attracting all these pollinators and other insects into the garden as well, and they help to keep the water nice and oxygenated. And you've got these different ranges of plants, and you have some nice plants in the water, which give cover and provide the algae and the oxygen and the food for the tadpoles. And you do need that sort of full ecology going on in your pond. So, but the amazing thing is that even small ponds can be really important for frogs and toads and amphibians and newts. So you don't actually have to have that big garden that you can see there. We can look at those in a bit. And what else you need in your garden is some nice rough grassland, because the frogs especially are only in the water for about 2 to 3 months at the absolute most. So you need to provide some cover for them. So here we've got some wood and hedge and things at the back, some and some rough grassland with wildflowers in. And again, this is what's providing the ecology that provides the frogs and the toads and the other amphibians with the food. So you can get worms and beetles and things in there. If you have a pond like that in a really well manicured lawn, or perish the thought, even worse, an astroturf lawn, you are really affecting the amount of land available for your frogs and toads. And one of the things is it's not just your garden, it's all your neighbours' gardens. The more people who take this on board, the more you can add together that garden resource across the landscape. So you get that bigger garden. So even if you live in a little terraced house, if you can persuade a couple of your neighbours that they'd like to join you in frog gardening, you can soon get a patch that's suitable for frogs and newts. And the other thing, as you can see in this little cartoon, there are newts. That dinosaur creature is actually a newt, but you can see that by building these hibernacula where the animals can live, full of logs and pebbles and rubble, that's where the frogs and the newts and everything go to hibernate in the winter. Because they're cold-blooded, they need to be able to shelter from the cold weather. So their bodies are dependent on the temperature of the environment. So in the winter, frogs and newts all have to go and hibernate somewhere where the temperatures are relatively warm and stable. So that is an ideal structure. But other things that you can do is leave some bricks and rubble in a corner, or logs in a stack. One of the important things to do, though, is if you're going to do this, don't suddenly decide to tidy the garden up in autumn or over winter, because that's after the animals and the newts, frogs will have found a home and will be busy hibernating. So it's a really guaranteed way of ruining their day. So here we have a diagram of an ideal pool with our frog. And you can see that there's loads of bits of the habitat. What you need is a nice shelf so that animals can get in and out. Quite often, even the ponds tend to be very, very sharp at the edges. And so things that get into the water struggle to get out. So there we have a hedgehog drinking, but if it's too steep, it's swimming time for a hedgehog. Same with the frogs and the newts. They get in and they've got no room and no ability to get out, then they struggle. And you've got to remember just how tiny the little froglets are when they're trying to get out. So that's really important. But you've also got all these tall so all these tall plants there with the surface plants, and then around the outside, all this lovely habitat, which again is really important for the species in their own right, but it's really important for providing the frogs and the newts with food resource, because they eat a lot of the beetles and things. But you will also bring in, here we have a little sparrow drinking, but you also bring in all these birds and opportunities for them to drink and bathe and catch insects. And this is what the little pipistrelles that you often see over your garden are really benefiting from, these pond structures. So really nice habitat there with a good range of things going on. And at the bottom again, loads of cover for your creatures to hide and live in, because without that, they will easily become prey. So they need that good mixture of opportunities there, and nice shallow water to allow the frog spawn to keep warm and heat up and then allow it to develop. If it's all deep water and it sinks down here, it'll take a long time, and then the frogs will miss the opportunity to fully develop in a year. It's interesting, frogs and toads, most of the tadpoles will develop in the first year, but quite a number will overwinter and take 2 years to develop. And this isn't a problem, but bear it in mind if you're deciding to do your pond maintenance. Now, one of the things that's a problem is if you go and stick 2 or 3 very large goldfish in here, because they will eat lots of your prey. So either have very low fish density, or preferably don't stock your amphibian ponds with fish. So there we go. There's a garden pond in a, this is obviously quite a large garden, but you can see it's ideal. It's got the nice edge here for the creatures to get in and out, and loads of diversity around the outside of the pond. So there's a lot of foodstuffs for your frogs, and so on. And you've got lily pads. Ideally, it might be better if it didn't have quite such a sheer wall all the way around the back, but you can see that this is put in on a slope, so it's probably needing it to keep the stock here, keep the water in the pool. So lots of diversity is the message. Overhanging grass, not too tidy around the outside, because if you keep it too tidy, you lose that diversity and the ability of the frogs and the toads to get cover. And the mortality of the little froglets as they leave is quite often things that you wouldn't expect, like a couple of blackbirds sitting here mopping them up. You've seen the pictures of the turtles being eaten by the seagulls on David Attenborough films. Well, blackbirds and thrushes will do the same, or jackdaws or magpies. So lots of cover to get them a chance to get away and into the bushes. So there we go, and that's a little pond. So everybody, I've got a terraced house and I've got a little pond in the garden. You can have quite a small pond, and you can either use a pond liner. I like using the butyl pond liners that you can get. You can get them from the garden centre or off the internet. Or you can use one of these pre-formed ponds. Obviously, it all depends on the budget and how easy it is, but the black butyl rubber goes into the hole you dig really well, and then you can make sure you get this lovely edge sorted out. So there you go, a tiny wee pond. It shows the sort of thing that you can do. I'd like to see this structure buried in the ground so that it was nearer the ground level, so that it maximizes the benefit to drinking wildlife. But I think it showed what you can do with quite a small container. This is only a small 2'6", 75 centimeter flower pot. But if you build these sort of little bits of structure in with bricks so that the creatures can get out, you're amazed. I've seen newts breeding in ponds this size quite regularly. Might be a bit small for frogs, but definitely a newt pond in the making here. So they're quite happy if you keep that topped up with water, and that was buried in the ground, maybe just with an inch or so of rim, 2 centimeters of rim, then that would be a really good little great crested newt pond, and you'd benefit so much other wildlife as well. So that's a really good thing. And then make sure you plant a good range of plants around the outside. So the important bit of the message is, it doesn't matter how small your garden is, remember it's part of a much wider landscape that is enabling frogs and toads and newts to occupy areas that you wouldn't really expect. So really urban areas will have good populations if there are the habitats within people's gardens. So there you go. That would give people, that would be fine for frogs and newts and toads. If people here had little ponds in their gardens, that would have plenty of opportunities. You've got the terrestrial habitat, you've got the network of routes for the frogs and the toads to use, it, especially at night, and the shelter during the day. So all it wants in there is just a few little pools. And even when you look through the city centre there in Manchester, there are plenty of opportunities within the parks and the communal open spaces and behind these houses here to have relatively small ponds like the bucket pond that we just looked at, as well as other features in your garden. So it's all part of just improving that network in the landscape. But it's these type of gardens are really important, and it's not just frogs and amphibians, but things like hedgehogs will also be using them, and quite a lot of other wildlife going through them. So you'd be amazed by just how important these green corridors are in these areas. So, you know, you can really go out, and then with the family, you can appreciate all this lovely wildlife. You know, hopefully it won't be much longer now until we can start going out and enjoying our wild spaces again. And the great thing is that these wild spaces can be your local park, your local wildlife trust site, or your garden. You've got these opportunities. These are species that are quite democratic. They're available for everybody easily. You don't have to be a twitcher or somebody who's got a car and can drive off into the sunset looking for all the ultimately rare orchids. These aren't there, just available in your landscape when you go for your exercise. So it's fantastic, and you should now be starting very soon to see these. But if we get some warm weather in February, then the frogs and the toads will soon be out, and you may be lucky and see newts in the water very soon as well. So standing quietly, looking into any pools of water, you will have a good chance of seeing them, and they don't even have to be that amazingly clean. Any town park will give you a good opportunity for seeing these range of species. So here's what we can do. If you've got a garden, even a small garden, putting in any water will make a huge difference. Even a small container pond will make a big difference, and it helps. Even if they don't spawn in your pond, it will help make the links in the habitat. So these little pocket water bodies are really important in helping the species move through the landscape. But you'll also be helping the birds and the invertebrates and the hedgehogs. They'll all have somewhere where they can drink. And by having these habitats, you'll be bringing in the invertebrates as food for these creatures. Make sure that there are some log piles and some long grass, or some bricks or something in the corner. That works quite well. So you can have lots of different little habitats to help. And then you can encourage the insects into the garden, plant species that are going to help the pollinators, and the pollinators will include things like beetles as well as just the bees, and the butterflies and the caterpillars. They're all part of that sort of urban ecology, as well as the stuff that we traditionally think of out in the countryside. And you can have these species right in your doorstep wherever you live. And you can speak to your neighbours. The more people that have a pond, and create little holes in the fence to allow the frogs to move underneath the gate. Or indeed, it improves it no end if you've got little holes, and the hedgehogs can nip through as well. So you've got this really good way of linking all those green spaces we saw in that previous slide, and allowing the creatures to move through that landscape. If you have a very, very tight concrete fence right to the floor and there's no holes, then it's just your garden. It ceases to be part of the landscape for many of these terrestrial creatures. Right, and then other things you can do, of course, you could become a member. We'd love you to do that. You can volunteer with us as soon as we can get volunteering back up and running. We've got some volunteering opportunities at the moment. And you can obviously sign up to the My Wild Garden campaign, receive your free guide, and turn your space over to whatever you want that's environmentally sound. So there's real opportunities for everybody to get involved. So thanks for listening, and I'll take your questions when they're read out to me.
Thank you, Mark. That was so interesting. I'll stop sharing my screen now.
Thanks very much. That's it was I like the inspiration to go and do something, and we have got some questions, but I'm just going to take advantage of the fact that I'm talking to you and say that in the last lockdown, I think in November, I dug a hole in my lawn and put my my very old children's paddling pool into the lawn to create a pond. So I know you're talking about different sorts of structures that you can put in the pond, but if anyone's got a paddling pool that they're no longer using, it just seemed ideal to me. So that's now my pond.
That's what we like.
Yeah, yes, it is very exciting.
Plastic, reuse it.
Absolutely. And as my youngest child is 15, it does seem it's been hanging around quite a long time without anything happening in it. So
do not use it anymore.
strangely no. So moving on to people's questions. Somebody, Vicky, would like to know if you can recommend any plants for around the edge of a pond, around a pond.
There's some nice species that are kind of native, which again means that they get the maximum amount of, makes me sound like I'm having a bit of a do about, you know, as it were, I was Brexit bloke, but no, native plants get the widest range of native insects and things, so that's why we like them. But so things like purple loosestrife is really nice. Hedge woundwort, they're nice, and they're pretty as well and give you the structure. So marsh woundwort, purple loosestrife. There's not native but still attractive and still quite good for wildlife is Lobelia cardinalis, which is quite nice and gives you sort of red coloured leaves and is attractive. So there's quite a nice set of species. Go to your garden centre and have a look. There are also some really nice wetland nurseries selling stock online, which is actually remarkably cheap.
That's good to know.
I'm probably not allowed to advertise, but try somewhere like Naturescape, which I'm not advertising. There are plenty of others that are around, but they have a really nice package and do small numbers for garden ponds, as it were.
Yeah, brilliant. That's really helpful. Thank you. And I know you've mentioned this. Glennis asked, what's the earliest date for frog spawn in England? I know you said if it warms up, it could be February. I
think you'll probably find that there'll be somewhere in somewhere that's had it in January, frog spawn in January. I haven't got an earliest date, but I've known it quite early in February, so I'm guessing somewhere down in Cornwall. Bet it's occurred in January.
Yeah, and this has been a cold winter compared to lots, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Lots of winters we've barely had a frost, so I bet it's been very early in some places.
Yeah. I've had my pond in my garden's been frozen now on and off for a couple of months, really.
Yeah. So Joseph says, we've got a medium-ish pond in the garden, 1.5 by 2 meters, and usually have at least 5 frogs staying at any one time. We've counted 20 plus on a few occasions, but we haven't had any frog spawn for 15 years. Any idea what could be going on?
It sounds a bit smug, but you'd have to wait till I get to the end. It's because they found somewhere else to spawn. There's somewhere where there isn't a medium-ish pond. I'm guessing that our neighbour or locally there is a larger pond, and what they're doing is they're making their way there, and then remembering there's a better option down the road in terms of size. So if there is a nearby larger water body, you are probably one of the pocket pools on the way, because 20 frogs worth of spawn would be a lot. So it would there won't be a specific answer unless we were to look at that pond and then ask the question. But I am guessing that it's. I mean, if there are frogs, they've got to be spawning somewhere, because a frog that's carrying spawn, you know, is going only one place, as it were, and that's to drop the spawn. So have a look around on Google Earth or something and have a look and see if you can find where it is.
Yeah. So Joseph, your pond is absolutely vital, but obviously it's being a bit upstaged by somebody else's pond. Sounds like.
Dig a bigger pond. Dig the whole garden and make a pond.
Yeah, turn it into a big lake. I saw a question in the chat earlier about leaves in the pond, and if that's a problem, do you need to remove them? If so, how?
You do need to remove them once in a while. I wouldn't remove them every year, because or remove them all because they're part of the ecosystem. So, but if you're not careful, the water will go sour because of the leaf decay and the bacteria and everything eating the leaves, and you'll use all your oxygen up and it'll go sour, and gradually your pond will fill up with leaves. So remove some of them every year is the advice. What's not very good for a pond is to do a total clean out, because you take out all the invertebrates and you sort of start again. What's better is to keep doing maintenance. Once in a while, of course, your pond will fail because the butyl liner or the pond cracks and you have to start again. But if you can just keep on top of the leaves, making sure there aren't too many in, fish them out with some. Bear in mind that if you stick a rake into your garden pond that's got a butyl rubber liner, you might well do a lot of damage. So, yeah. While it's still warm in the autumn, you can take them out by hand if it's a small pond, or with a fishing net or something. That's quite a good method.
Yeah, and a similar question from Helen, who says she's recently made a pond and built up the soil and marginal plants around the pond, which made the water turn quite brown. And then she says, is that a problem? Have you got any tips about that?
No, if it's gone brown, you're probably getting washing when it rains. So that's the clay affecting it. Or what can happen is that you get algae that isn't quite. There was another question about how can I do my pond. So I'll take the green pond at the same time, because they're the same. They're flip sides of the same coin. Yeah. So what you're getting is you get soil wash into the pond if you're not careful and you've got it too close to. So it's worth having a look to see if that's the problem. The other thing is that the water will adjust to its environment. So when you put clean tap water into your pond to fill it up, obviously it's sparkly clean, because that's how you want to drink it. Then what happens is that gradually ecology forms in your pond and various things happen, which if it's getting nutrients in from somewhere, will give you green water. And if you, other roots will give you a slightly brown tinge. But I'm guessing that there's an earth leak into the pond. It's coming down and washing soil in, and that's what's making it brown. The same with the green pond. You're getting leaf material into the pond or other nutrients from somewhere, and there isn't enough macrophyte, i.e. leafy plants, to eat the nutrients before the algae benefits from them. So even on big waters like at the Wick and Flashes, you can get an algal bloom if the water weeds don't grow quickly enough. The problem is that some of the water weeds that are most effective at taking out algae are equally the ones that you really don't want in your pond, such as Canadian pondweed. You hardly ever get algae if you've got Canadian pondweed, because it's so hungry and eating the nutrients that there isn't anything left for the algae. But quite frankly, you move from one devil to another there. So I would make sure that you've got enough, especially the aquatic ones, milfoils, and quite a nice one is starwort. They'll all help drag the nutrients out, and then you won't get the algae.
Brilliant.
It's getting your ecology balanced. The problem is that that it's very difficult to plant into green water, because the green water stops the light getting to the plants. So you get into a circle.
Yeah.
So I plant either very early or take out some of the green water with a siphon and put in a bit more tap water to freshen it, because otherwise you'll not get the plants planted, and you then will continue with the green water, or find out if you've got loads of leaves at the bottom.
Right. Right. Thanks very much. I'd like to ask Hannah's question. Hannah's 10 years old and she's asking, we have 2 cats. Would this be a problem for the frogs?
It can be a little bit. If your cats are particularly playful, they won't eat the frogs, generally speaking. But what they will do when they find a hopping frog is do what cats do and chase it and paw it. And they won't know any better. So it's worth making sure that if you're going to that you've got the bushes to keep the cats away from the frogs until they get to the water, that sort of thing. It doesn't mean you can't do this, but just be aware that if they've got to cross a large lawn where you play with your cat and you throw balls to cats.
I'm not sure.
But that's where the problem would be, is if you've got a big lawn and the cat patrols it.
Right. Thank you.
We had a question about handling frogs, and you know, should you do it with wet hands? Is it going to hurt them at all?
It's probably best not to handle them at all, if you can avoid it. But if you've got to, you know, like one's decided to walk into the conservatory, which isn't unknown for amphibians to do these tricks, especially in the autumn when they're looking for somewhere to hibernate. Wet your hands and then put it outside. But it's the less you handle them, the better it is, because their skin burns really easily and you can damage the mucus layer, which is how they breathe.
Okay. And slightly connected with that, Graham's asked, Christine's asked, she remembers when she was a child going to the park and taking some frog spawn home for her own pond. And is that frowned upon nowadays?
It is somewhat, yes, I'm afraid, because the frogs chose their main pond for the pond because it's highly suitable. So as a professional, I'm in a position of having to say I wouldn't do that, please.
Yes, okay. And was there a disease that was being?
There is a disease, which is a fungus disease of frogs and toads, and that was being moved around the country by people introducing frogs into their ponds and moving frog spawn as well. So they were moving it around the country. They'd find frog spawn and think, oh, there's some frog spawn in Surrey. I know, I'll take it to Lancashire when I'm on my way home from Granny's, which was not a good thing.
James asks, which is your favourite British amphibian and why?
Well, I quite like pool frogs because they're so bizarrely untypical, and it was one of the species that I first saw when I was really young, and wondered what on earth they were, because they were different to the frogs I knew from the garden, and so they sort of started me off on this career amongst many other little wildlife moments, finding them in the brecks at a pond and them all making this funny noise. So I quite soft spot for pool frogs. But I like all of them. They're all really smart in their own way. So can't say as I have a favourite, but I do like the pool frog on the grounds that, you know, it was a career moment.
I rather like the warty toads, I must say. But, there you go. Val is asking, what time of year should you be sorting out your pond? She's got various pond issues that she needs to change the design because one's steep sided and it's leaking. And is it too late, she's saying now? No,
well, it's a bit cold now because doing pond work in this temperature is uncomfortable. But if you get on with it now, it would be a very good time to do it. Because everything's dormant and so on. Otherwise, if you can hold off until the sort of late summer, sort of August, September time becomes the next best time. There were several queries. The duckweed and the blanket weed is much the same as the green water. It's the pond is too fertile. You need to reduce the fertility of the pond either by desilting it, or it might be that it's in the shade and too shaded, or it isn't getting enough growth of what we call macrophytes, i.e. the big chunky water plants. So make sure you've got your balance right. And maybe the other one is if there's a branch hanging over it, remove said branch from the tree just to get the light into the pool. Pools that are very shaded and getting full of leaves, especially things like oak leaves and beech leaves, tend to go only one direction, which is blanket weed and duckweed.
Right.
Linda asks.
Smell when you stir up the mud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Linda asks, I used to have frogs, but newts have taken over. Why is this?
I don't know.
Right.
I think
We don't know, Linda.
I think we're back to the same thing, that somebody has dug or cleaned out, or a water course. Is the other thing that's happened with people taking some care in parks and things, is that what was once a sort of urban pond have been cleaned up, which is a good thing. But what's allowed the frogs to move back to their core, because frogs like bigger water bodies. So what I think's happened, but I can't tell because I can't see the geography and the size of the pond, is that the frogs have moved off to a bigger pond, the same as the other question, and the newts are able to use much smaller ponds than frogs, and so they've filled the gap, because a newt will use that little container pond that we saw. They'll be quite happy in there, so they can use tiny little ponds, let alone, so they're less tied to the big ponds. In fact, they don't like big ponds because big ponds tend to have fishing and frogs, and so they like the slightly smaller ponds. So I'm guessing, although I can't see, that's what's gone on.
Great.
There was a thing that was quite interesting about mosquitoes that I saw, because people, and I think it's a general one, if you get your ecology right and you get enough beetles and things going on in it, so you get enough water plants that are emergent coming out the sides, you won't get mosquitoes, because things like the dragonflies will come in and do. So you shouldn't really fill it up. You shouldn't really, if you're getting the water plant populations, you will get beetles and things moving to eat the mosquitoes. So it might be that you just need to invest a bit more in your marginal plants.
Yeah, we've got areas of Wythenshawe in South Manchester that are famous for their biting mosquitoes. There's a lot of very shady ponds there, and I think they're just too shady to have any vegetation in.
Yeah. That's the ones. That's what you tend to find, is that the ones that I get, like the person who asked the question, the blanket weed and the duckweed are full of mosquito larvae because they can cope with that condition. It's a sign that the pond isn't doing quite right at the moment and needs a bit of a bit of adjustment, especially to get the dynamic working better.
Yeah. Okay, I think have we answered most questions, do you think, Ellie and Mark? I think we've covered most topics.
Yeah, I can only see so many as they pop up, but
yeah, there's a lot of interest, a lot of people wanting to talk about ponds. There was one question about can we easily help with citizen science, so I guess recording where you see frogs and...
Yes, there is a citizen science recording set of course coming up at the moment, if somebody's interested particularly in that. Otherwise, the GMEU webs, I will send you a link, Ellie, for the GMEU page, and then they can lead from there. But yeah, it's pretty easy to get involved. And there are also the things like iRecord, which make it really nice and easy as well. Yeah. Which I don't use, but but we could find those as well.
Yeah, and we're very keen to hear about where people see frogs. Very keen, especially here. We're in Manchester, especially here in Manchester. It's good to know where they are. So yeah, the more sightings we get, the more recordings people make, the better. Brilliant.
I'll just drop the link to GMEU in the chat now. But yeah, we would also love to hear if you've got some frogs in your garden. We'd love to see pictures as well. So do share that with us.
Ellie, there's also their recording website, which page, which I'll find for you.
Yeah. No worries. I'll see if
I've got it on my computer where I go to it regularly.
Yeah. And somebody's just asked what's the best time to make a pond, and I have to say, just now, go and do it. One of the great things about doing it now is that there's so much rainwater to fill it up. And And as Mark said earlier, it's not, you've got plenty of time for things to get established before the weather warms up and the creatures start moving around. So yeah, just do it. It's brilliant.
But if you're a bit nesh like I am, you could always do it in the spring.
Yeah.
Take into account that it's, you know,
Yeah. Chilly.
Yes, it's a bit chilly at the moment to be playing with water, but yeah, any time is because you're starting from scratch, so it doesn't matter. It's the maintenance that you've got to be more careful about, because you're actually then interfering in an ecosystem that's working. So you can set up a pond whenever you want to.
Brilliant.
I'll just mention as well that there is a really fantastic guide about ponds that was created by the Wildlife Trusts in partnership with RHS. So if you type into your web browser Wild About Gardens, there's a guide in there that's all about ponds, and it has suggestions for plants and suggestions for plants for different sizes of pond and other wildlife that you can see, and it's all really easy to sort of get information from, so I definitely recommend that as well. But do also feel free to let we're sort of coming to the end of this event now, but do keep the conversation going. We're always more than happy to talk to you about your wildlife pond and giving you suggestions and hearing how things are going. So yeah, do keep in touch. So I think should we end there? I know we've got a lot of questions. We haven't got round to everyone. So thank you so much for your interest, and yeah, like I say, do keep, if you've still got a burning question after this and we've just not got around to it, then do get in touch and we'd love to hear from you. And I'd just like to say a huge thank you to Mark for joining us today. It was a really fascinating talk. Loved it. Yeah, it was great. Thank you so much for all your knowledge and passion about frogs and amphibians. A big thank you to everyone who's joined us today, who is a member with us. We are a wildlife charity, so thank you so much for your support. If you've not joined us as a member yet, or you'd just like to make a one-off donation, it would be hugely well received with us to help us continue our vital work to protect wildlife. And keep an eye on our events page for more events like this. So yeah, I think that's everything, isn't it?
Yeah, thanks very much, everybody.
Great, thank you so much. And thanks again, Mark.
No
and have
problem.
a lovely evening, everyone.
Yeah. Happy pond making.
Happy pond making, everyone. Bye.